Hello, and welcome to the DoneJS contributors meeting. Today is Friday, July 7th, 2017. My name is Jason, and today joined by some core and non-core team members alike. You guys want to introduce yourselves?
Hello from Reno, I'm Christopher.
Hi, I'm Justin. I like hot sauce.
Hi, I'm Kevin. I also like hot sauce.
Matthew. Also, hot sauce is good. Yes, great.
Hi, I'm Sheriff. Oh.
Hey, Sheriff. I would like to state that I also like hot sauce, but not too hot. Just to put
Then
that
you don't like
on
hot
record.
sauce.
Okay.
So like
I didn't
ketchup?
inherit.
You like warm sauce.
Like
Warm sauce is more of my flavor.
So like ketchup, is that?
Yeah, with a little bit of spice. I didn't inherit the strong desire for spiciness from my Mexican side of the family, so just kind of missed out there. All right, so let's go through our statuses, what we worked on this past week, and what we plan on working on next week, and then after that we'll get to topics. I'll go first. So this past week started off the week and continued throughout the week working with one other Batovian on search for DoneJS.com. There's been just a bunch of little things that have had to get fixed, so we're almost done with that. If we have time today, I might give a demo of what that looks like, because we should be launching it like today or Monday. And then I also published the DoneJS community update on Wednesday. Check out blog.batovi.com. We'll show you all of the blog posts from Batovi, and on there's the June 2017 DoneJS community update. It goes through talks that we gave and trainings and what releases were made, and a list of all of the contributors that contribute to the DoneJS projects. And then some links to things we're working on and looking forward to. So check that out if you haven't already. And then, so this next week, we have CanJS 3.9 with can React and React View models, and can connect ND JSON stream and can ND JSON stream, and just a million different things. So next week, I'm looking forward to helping with all of those getting out the door and then promoted. So that's what I'll be working on. Justin, you want to go?
Yes. So this week I mostly spent my time fixing CanJS's tests so that they wouldn't error if Travis was running really slow. I think as a general practice now, we've got to avoid waiting for 10 years for a test to eventually pass that's never going to pass is better than assuming everything's going to look okay in 100 milliseconds. So I was mostly all the tests that were sometimes flakily breaking. I would run our CI a bunch of times, wait till some broke, found the repo, try to rewrite the test so that it would, you know, no matter how, as long as it was going to pass, it didn't matter how long that test took. And our test had seemed to stabilize a little bit more, which is really nice. I'm sure there's still like 5 of these things just waiting to be discovered. I just feel like we got it to the point where you can run the test like 5 times and you won't see one. So I think just as a general practice going forward, we've got to make sure all tests work that way. Hopefully then I will get a release. We're waiting on one just crazy, it sounds like crazy React View model bug where if you look at it, then it works. But if you don't look at it, then it breaks.
Is that a Heisenberg bug? Or,
yeah, it's a Heisenberg bug.
Yeah.
Yeah, Christopher's been working on that. And then what else I got done this week? I added canned slots. That's one of the other kind of big features that is being added for 3.9. I got a decent amount of progress on the new binding syntaxes. I mean, they might actually be done and working. I just have to write a lot more tests for them. But next week, my plan is I wrote like 2 months ago, maybe even longer, stable and innovative article on like what we're doing to CanJS's code base to keep it stable yet innovative. But I didn't release it mostly because we'd only really done one of the things that I mentioned that we want to do for that article, which was to split everything up into its own packages. Now that Reflect is in place, that's another feather in our cap towards that. So now I feel like more comfortable saying like, well, we've done 2 of 5 ideas here, so we're actually taking it seriously. So I'm going to release it. And then I have a presentation on streams that I'm giving in Wisconsin Dells. I don't know if anybody else knows what that is, besides Kevin. I'm sure Kevin knows what it is. It's like it's all like if you're from Illinois, like around Chicago, it's in middle of Wisconsin, biggest water parks. It's kind of, I don't know. It's a really fun place. My grandfather would take me there when I was young, but I'm giving a talk there at that conference about streamable web apps. So I got to get a rough draft ready for that. And then, yeah, finish the binding syntaxes, and that should be it for me next week. That's it for me.
Yeah, still a lot. Kevin, you want to go?
Sure, yeah. So this week I've primarily been working on the client project, debugging crazy things and doing a lot of refactoring. But I released this morning Can Debug 0.1. It's something I started working on the plane last week and then finally finished up last night. It doesn't do a whole lot yet, but something that we're looking to improve. So I might work on that more next week. We'll see. That's something I want to talk about in topics, like what it should actually do.
Cool. Sounds good. Matthew.
I've been working on a lot of server rendering related items, incremental rendering in particular, sort of debugging. While debugging some problems I was having, I noticed that can route sets creates like kind of a decorator for maps that you use as your route.data. And that kind of happens over and over again during SSR. So it's potentially cause like a max call stack error message. So I fixed that. Yeah, 2cows found a bug, a very good bug, because it was a very difficult one to figure out what the problem was. But they found a bug where sometimes on well, actually I think it was always in their case, but kind of the bundle CSS, not the main CSS for the website, but the specific page CSS was not being attached in SSR. So they would get it, where the page would load, it'd be unstyled, or that part, the main styles would be loaded, but the specific page part would not be, and it would come in later when Steel loaded it. So it turned out to be kind of a somewhat difficult to do, but because we work with them, we were able to debug into, like, I was able to work with someone with Batovi and figure out what it was. So it was really, really awesome that we were able to fix that bug, because I'm sure, it's one of those things where unless you have a really large application, you might not encounter this, but because they did, then they were able to figure that out. So that was awesome. And yeah, I'm next week, well, maybe not next week, but here shortly, I'm gonna start working on trying to get some other framework to work with SSR, because we want to show off the advantages of incremental rendering, and we want to see if we can get to work with another framework. So probably move on to that shortly. The other thing that I might be doing is a few people have had some problems with loading different dependencies in Steel, like npm dependencies, and we want to improve the error messages. It's usually something that the user, either it's a problem with the package or not having the correct version, not having version mismatch, that kind of thing. So we just want to make sure the error messages point people in the right direction on what to fix. So I'm going to work on that probably early next week.
Cool. Sounds great. Sheriff, you want to go?
Okay, thank you. So for this week, I worked on fixing the doc type annoying message when testing with DoneJS. So I add all the doc for the HTML files. And Jason, you mentioned this, I think. And I was working on the can util assign to mimic object assign function in ES6. But when testing, we have always some break-in tests, especially on can util event attributes. So I found where it breaks because the mutation record object that doesn't have all the doesn't have enumerated properties. So when we the loop will not copy all the attributes. That's where it breaks. So with what Justin suggests, we should have a simple assign like the old can simple extend in can version 2. Maybe we will fix it this way. If we add simple assign, everything will work great, I think. And this is what I did for this week. Okay.
Yeah, cool. Other than the like getting the assign issue, do you have anything else that you're working on next week?
Yeah, I will continue on the assign for the next week. I hope I will finalize, and I will see other enhancement and bugs. I don't have idea now, but I will pick an issue to work or several issues to work on.
Cool. Sounds great.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to topics. So, Kevin, I think you were the first one who posted about can debug. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, let me share my screen. Yeah, so can debug is this brand new thing that we have. Can you guys see my screen? All right.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So the initial release here that we released basically is doing this recursively logging dependencies. I kind of show what that means. In a simple can observation, you can call this debug method that can debug exports, and it will kind of tell you what that observation depends on for its value. So in this case, it's depending on prop 1 of this other observation, and it's depending on the value of this obs 2, whatever. So that's basically all it does right now, is prints out the observations. Most of the time, they're always observations for what your observation is depending on.
But recursively.
Yeah, recursively, right. So if obs 1 depended on something else, it would show you that here, right? Yeah, so it recursively goes through and tells you all the things that your observation depends on, which is kind of useful, but is also, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't really work all that well if you're using like other types like define map or whatever that we'll need to iron out. It'll still give you a bunch of observations under the hood, and it's kind of hard to tie those back to what it actually is in your code. So that's some stuff we have to fix. But what I wanted to talk about is kind of what else do we want this to do? I submitted one issue for something that Matthew asked about, and actually that I would need right now. So it would be awesome if you could use this to also log dependencies of kind of things that Candy Live is setting up. So elements, attributes, that kind of stuff. So if you have a stash template like this, can you call debug on this and figure out when message changes, why is this div not showing up? That kind of thing. Or the thing that I'm working on is like an attribute of an element isn't changing when I expect it to. So I'd like to be able to look at its dependencies to be able to debug that kind of thing. So first off, what do people think about this? I guess, Justin, do you think this is something that's actually possible for us to do? And then other than this, what else do we want to see CanDebug do? What other problems do people have that we would like to debug?
Yeah, so I mean, yes, this is exactly what I had in mind. So it is definitely possible. I think the difficulty in implementing it will be really with node lists. We probably would need like some kind of either rewrite or additions to node lists so that you know, really what it's going to be is we'd have to decorate elements like the element.prototype, with get key values or whatever. And what I would probably have it do is we would store because node lists kind of have all this information anyways, we would just program it. Like debug can be really slow. I would program it to just, as long as we had every single node list registered, which we might anyways. I'm not sure if node lists are all registered. If not, we can, especially we can make CanDebug only work in like Chrome, at least at first, because it has weak maps, and weak maps make everything a lot easier to avoid memory leaks. We could just, if we had every single node list, we could just loop. I mean, a very simple solution is keep every node list in a weak map, and then just loop through the weak map, and just check if like the node list that you're looping through has the element that was clicked on, and if it does, once you have that node list, like node lists kind of already have an associated computes that can be associated with them. So then you're off to the races. Now the problem is like one element could be in a lot of different. So there's a lot of different expressions, and a big part of it is going to be like, this is why I wanted like a can.name or can reflect name. So it's like we need like a debug name that can go with, or like some kind of debug output that can kind of more identify things to the user. Because what you'd want is, we already label every node list with the stash expression, so we'd want to print that. Like a big part of this is the way that I would approach it is get like the technical infrastructure in place first. So like CanDebug just goes and prints out the object, kind of like you just showed. You should be able to like get to the observations and then right click, and like you should be able to see the actual function. I think that my version was printing that. Hopefully yours is still too. Is providing that. Did you just copy the version I pasted in the, or like start with that?
I started with that, yeah. I didn't copy. I mean, I ended up rewriting it.
Yeah, but like there was I thought I exposed the actual functions that observations use to like generate their value, so that you could right click that and go right to the, I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think
that should still be exposed. Like, I guess what it is, it's like we need to get it so it's possible first, from like an element all the way to the observables, and then there's the whole like making it so that it's easy for someone to digest. I actually don't think it's going to be easy for like anybody who's not really good at CanJS to digest the like object form that we could produce for people. Like they really have to understand that. But what we could do, and my dream would be though, is that with that object form, we could make a little CanDebug tool that more easily, because there's a whole lot of cruff. Like if you look at the graph that gets produced by something like this, from an element all the way to the actual functions that might derive the computes observables, there's a lot there. And there's a lot of like computes that just wrap other observables like and do very little else. We'd really want like a UI that can display all of it much nicer.
Speaking of UI, have you guys seen Mark's DoneInspect project?
Yes.
I saw the issue that you put in.
Okay.
And I took a quick look at it, but
The DoneInspect? Okay. Yeah.
So sorry. Back in I think back in Denver, Mark started the DoneInspect project as a UI for being able to like show information. So it seems like we would want to kind of improve on that and use CanDebug as like the information that is shown in the UI. I don't know how much is showing right now. I feel like it was just like showing some like component information, but it seems like the two together would work really well, or could work really well.
What would be really cool, and I can't remember what his did, it might have done this, but it'd be really cool is you could like tag some type of compute or some type of thing, and you can visually see, like, you know, like in a to-do app, you're like, oh, this influences this field, and it also influences this thing, like kind of visually see, you know, starting at one point, what actually affects on the screen.
Yeah, you could reverse the graph too. I mean, that's possible. So yeah, I mean, I think the way that I would approach it, though, like in some ways, my first goal was to make it useful for us as like developers. Is like that. That's why I actually wrote it. Like that little snippet that I pasted was just because I was debugging some compute stuff or observation stuff, and I was like, man, what does it depend on? What are the values? I need to be able to see this and trace where things are going wrong because CanJS wasn't working. And it was really helpful for that. Yeah. And we could get a version of it where it's like the information is nice in like the little object form, and then hopefully work to provide that so that people could build.
So Justin, I think what you were saying with all that crazy node list stuff is that like maybe you could like, you know, you said there would be a tool is you like click on a text node or something like that, and then it would be like, okay, hey, here's what's happening.
I mean, we already should be able to call like what I mean, this is actually with CanReflect, it's not yeah, that would be the ideal. But I guess what I'm saying is to set ourselves up for that, I should just be able to write like node dot prototype, and then I would do can symbol for can dot what is it? What's the property? Get dependencies? Get
value dependencies.
Yeah, because this would be a value. Yeah. Although you could, maybe it would be key. You would want it actually for, if you were being really fancy, you'd want it for the node value, but whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, you might want both.
You could presumably have a single node that's got computes on multiple parts of it, but yeah. Let's not talk about that right now. Let's keep it simple. Anyways, so with this, I would just want to, like, CanDebug would add things like this, right? And then presumably in development mode, node list is doing something like putting some, like every, in some kind of like global node lists dot like every active node list. All it could do is just put this as an array, and CanDebug, it really could depend on everything, because it's like who cares, right? Like, so if it's importing can node list, you know, some or maybe they need some way of acting, but we could make it as simple as, or I guess this could even write that. It's doing it itself. It could all just go in node list, and this could all just be, you know, steal, remove, start. So it's not active in debug mode, and basically it's just going to look through this list of node lists to find their corresponding compute, and then just the object that this returns, this get value dependencies, this just looks like a it has two different properties. It has key dependencies, which is a CID. It's like a map of objects. So like in this case, it might, if this node depended, like there was a compute that was setting its node value, right? It was, we basically were listening to this compute and updating this node's value. You would have a map of basically that compute to, actually this would be a value dependency, because this doesn't have key value pairs. So if it just depends on a single value and not like an object property, it would just, this is just a set of the computes that it would depend on. So we would just write something like this, that this would just have to crawl through the node lists, find the corresponding computes, and, you know, this is all it has to do. It's actually not that much. It would just have to find that compute and return an object like this. It's actually not that hard. And then ideally, everything observable that can derive from something else implements this. Now, this would be tricky with something like, you know, I don't know if Kefir or other things are going to allow us to really add this. So if you had started, you know, passing Kefir streams into CanView Live, would it be able to do this? I don't know. But, and this actually might be in CanView Live, actually. CanView Live could just, with weak maps, do this pretty easy because it knows the node. It could actually just store in a weak map a list of every node that is hooked up to every node that it's wiring up. It could just do that to the compute that it was passed, whatever. I think the only problem is there's some nodes that are in multiple node lists. I'm getting very into the weeds right now, but taking a big step back. Yes, very doable. I think it'd be really, really helpful for people. You know, I think we get the data first and then add nice, pretty UIs on top of it later.
Cool. If anybody else out there has things they can't debug right now or would like to be able to debug easier, this is the place to add those issues.
Yeah, so you just want people to create issues in the can debug repo?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. Anything else on this before we move on?
Yeah, I guess I would say, I think it would be useful to, can debug maybe can even just be the repository. We needed a debugging guide. It's something that I've been wanting to build for a long time for CanJS. Like little things that I know, but nobody, like yeah, node lists all have, what is a node list? But it all has its expression, right? It's like a junction of the compute, the expression, and all of the stuff. Like they're really easy. It's a nice signal that runs throughout CanJS's code base, but nobody else knows how to use them unless you've had to debug stuff like that. It'd be really good to the can compute trick or component or construct trick that the proto chain has every single like behavior that are all added in the order that they're added, that you can just see that and see every method. Like things like that. It's like we just need a debugging tricks and tips. Like CanSet, I did write one in CanSet, which is like, you know, here's how you can test to make sure your set algebra is actually good. You wrote it the right way. It works against your data. We need an effort like that, I think.
Cool. Yeah, I agree. Anything else? Nope. Okay. Justin, do you want to talk about CanJS next, CanJS 4, the future of CanJS?
I do. I guess I'm not as. I guess I might need to talk about this again next week because I'm probably not as prepared as I want. But I guess I'm going to start trying to formulate what that would look like. You know, part of it that I had in mind is like the core things. I think, you know, if we're just trying to get to a 4.0, I want to get to a 4.0 soon. What is 4.0? Like, what are, and to me, a 4.0 is kind of like what, it gives us an opportunity to take like a new stake on like, here's what really how you should be building CanJS applications. And my opinion on it is it should be can element. We start showing things in ES6. We're still using define map, or like maybe can define, but just as decorators with classes. Did I say something other than can element? What did I say?
No, I just hit enter on accident.
Huh?
No, I was just trying to keep a list and I hit enter on accident.
Oh, yeah. Let me write it up, and so we can take. So I think it should be like can element, right? Using using ES classes. It should still be defined like observables. Should still be there. The new binding
not stream-based view models.
Huh?
Not stream-based view models. You don't think?
No. No. It's way too like.
That was pretty definitive.
Yeah. I think that stuff's really cool. I just think that that's not like, I think there's a lot there to think about, but I think it's too far,
Okay.
It's still kind of experimental.
It's still so experimental. I think like can element, although kind of experimental, is like well understood. You know what I mean? Like we have, it's basically a
I'm not sure it is. I understand it, but I not a whole lot of people are using.
But it's mostly just like a can component, right? But it's on the element itself. Is it much different than that?
The biggest thing would be if you use Shadow DOM. Shadow DOM does not let styles penetrate it at all.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing. So we might want a solution for that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay
if you don't have to use Shadow. If you don't use Shadow DOM, then you have to implement your own content kind of thing, right? You'd have to bring that in somehow.
Okay. Well, it could just be passed to the can element. Okay, so I guess like I just want to identify like where we need to think things through more. The other thing what I'd like is that 4.0, like in terms of breaking compatibility, like what I think I wrote that, like what do we? Hold on, let me organize our thoughts a little bit. So like, there's the new like way of doing things, right? And ideally, we would show using ES classes and get rid of can construct. Not get rid of, but let me make that a little bit clearer early. Still use our observables based on can define. New binding syntaxes, I think still, my ideal would be like we still have stash, but like certain things kind of cleaned up, just like a quick or removed, and a like JSX option. That's probably the most controversial part. And then for 4.0, like what does that mean in terms of like what are we gonna? I put this like, how much dead code can we move? What do we want to break? That's kind of another big question. And my answer would be like, I don't want to break compatibility with anything like you should be doing in 3.0. Like anything that was like okay in 3.0 still works, probably. Like, but I do want to start removing things like, what would be a really good example, like at index?
I'll like, break everything personally.
And
okay. About helper expressions.
Huh?
Helper expressions?
Yeah, I think those still gotta exist, maybe. We can always do a 5.0, right? Like with like that's why I want to kind of release like, so there's also like things like can can click still works. Can value.
I'll get rid of like, what's the thing where can controls can have their own type of event kind of things? What are those things called? Like, I'd get rid of.
Are we talking about templated events?
Give me a second. I'll look it up. Oh yeah, definitely. Did we already get rid of can route in control things?
Well, those can be legacy. There's no reason to like. To me, it's like, what are we? What
can control processor is what I was thinking of.
Oh yeah.
So weird. Anyways.
I don't know if there's a reason to remove that. I guess what I'm talking about is like, I guess the way I think about it is what do we want to remove from our like core. Like there's weird subtle things like can connect, like or can stash. Like this is one of those things that I want to remove is it has really weird rules for whether it's reading from the scope, the current context, or the helper scope? Do you know what I mean? Like, maybe nobody knows what I mean, but like, there's weird rules. Like, if it's on the context, that wins. If it looks like foo bar, if it looks like the helpers, then if foo is on the context, well, then it's going to use it on the context. But then it's going to use it look for it in the helpers, and then finally it's going to fall back to the scope. Like, I want to change this so it's always just going to look for the scope first, and helpers are like the helpers scope is always the secondary place things get looked at. Things like that would be a breaking change, but not. I don't know. It's not like going to a whole new thing by like eliminating helpers. We could. I mean, we could do.
What about
helpers always pass? Like, this would be the biggest breaking change that I would like to do. Helpers always pass values. Like, you have to use to pass computes. That would be. I think that would help a lot of people. And then we just remove showing helpers for the most part. We tell people always use, like, we just show in all our docs using each items kind of stuff. And we say, like, these things just kind of don't exist anymore, but they work. We just, like, we don't promote them.
So if we do that, we'll need to find a solution for as, like, each item's as item.
Yeah, I don't know, or something like that. Maybe we can figure that out.
Yeah, but we talked about maybe like an arrow function syntax, something that looks more like a arrow function callback. I don't know.
Maybe.
What about async events?
Async events. Oh, do we want to turn that on? I don't want to. I guess mostly because, like, I just would rather. I would rather. To me, I'm looking at 4.0 as mostly like it's a bridge to start removing a lot of dead code, and not a way of breaking people's apps. Like, it's still very extremely highly upgradable.
Maybe we could take some of those kind of some of those things that I'm not a huge fan of, like what some of the things are like the can you tell adder kind of things, and put them into their own projects. I know we've talked about that.
Yeah, I think that can happen pre 4.0 too.
It's true. I could.
To me, 4.0 is just two. It should represent two things. Like, there's some things that we've deprecated for a while that we want them to go, and we just are like, no, they're out of the code base. Like, we don't like, you've had a long time to move to, like, we might be on our third event syntax binding. You really don't need to be using these anymore. If anybody is anyway. So it's like, to me, it's mostly like it's a code cleanup and an introduction of some new ways of a cleaning up of the ways of doing things. Like, maybe, we're probably going to show like new connection kind of thing instead of wiring up can connect.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. As far as like breakings, I think the most important thing is like stuff that's kind of bad practice, the things that cause bad bugs, is the things that are most important to try to remove. I don't have any examples of that in CanJS, but I have several in SteelJS. But something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, like our biggest weakness is still stash, especially would be after this, and there's only. That's why I think if we can give a JSX option, with the new binding syntaxes, we clean up at least like one part of it. With making only kind of one only showing one call signature, I think we remove a lot of confusion for people. We say that, okay, well, there's this is just how you call things, and person coming new to the framework is just like, oh, okay, this is how you do everything. I don't know. I think this is all like very achievable in like a couple months time, which is that's why I like it.
Awesome. Yeah, I think just like you said, all the new Can Connect stuff that Nils is working on, just as far as making our docs look cleaner and a little bit more modern, I think would be a big benefit.
So the real only breaking changes are going to be in Stash for the most part.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna like. I mean, one thing I would like to do. I would also like to, if we're talking about new features, I would like little fun things. I would like it so if you make a define map and you do like my property and you can do string, of doing string, and you can do that with all of those types. Now, that might cause problems if you have really weird situations where like you're working with multiple frames, multiple realms, but we just say, you know, that could be a breaking, I think that's possible that's a breaking change, because what I would really like to allow then is then, but I guess I just don't want to go here, because what I would like then is then if you just did prop is foo, well then that's actually a default value. That allows then for, because I see people doing this all the time, is like prop is 2, right? Is they want to give some initial value here, and we could say, hey, yeah, you can put primitives here, and that will be taken as an initial value. Functions are going to be like, they're going to specify a type, and objects are basically the same define type object that we have now, where you're defining everything. I don't know. I thought that I think that would be a nice. I think this is just very, I see people trying to do this kind of thing all the time. And I'm like, no, you can't do that. I just would rather let them. But I don't need to do this. This is not, like, I really don't want to break define maps for people. Like, I'm more okay with Stash if like we have very small, a few basic changes. Maybe we don't even do this helpers always pass values. It's just like, then I just want to almost remove helpers. The other thing is, though, I don't. Go ahead.
Sorry, I don't think it's worth it to do the helpers always pass values if we're then just going to remove helpers entirely from the docs.
Sure, then we remove helpers.
So what we're really talking about is CanJS 4.0, but it's really CanStash 4.0, CanStash Bindings 4.0, but Can Route would still be 3. Whatever it is, right? That's
true. That's true.
Just CanStash 4.0.
And hopefully, I mean, ideally, people can use the 3.0, mix that in, and hopefully they have an overlapping set of dependencies that, like, there's not that much cost if you wanted to make some templates 4.0. The only problem is like how is Steel, like, are people gonna have to like import, they would have to import their template from foo.stash CanStash 3, or if we did 3, if they wanted the old one, and just, I guess CanStash would be 4.0. We could do that idea that we've talked about where we publish a CanStash 3 for the old branch, so they can still get that way. And they would have to do this for all their imports that were old, or they could do it for the new imports, depending on what they want their CanStash to mean, I guess. They could set up mapping. But hopefully we can make it so that like the cost of this isn't that much, right? Like all the helpers can probably still be the same. We could pull out some things inside CanStash into like CanStash dash modules, so that can all be shared if there's logic there. I don't know. We could probably make it not very costly for people if they want to migrate their app to CanStash 4 over time. If we want to think really boldly, we just say like, nope, we're going to just focus on the template stuff. Or to me, I think there's a few different options. We would just say like, no, we're going to punt on all of the template stuff except for the bindings. We're going to leave that in place and then release. But then why even release 4.0? 4.0. 4.0 is mostly just like, do we really have to release 4.0 then? We could just call it 3.0. We're just showing different things get moved around in terms of like how the docs are. I mean, that's the other.
How would this affect DoneJS? Like, for example, if a JXF option is added, and maybe that's even preferred.
Well, then we need to make that work with DoneJS eventually.
Agreed. I'm just wondering, like, what. I always like the idea that, hey, let's make rapid changes to CanJS and Steel, and then we'll coalesce those in DoneJS kind of when the dust has settled.
Yeah, that's exactly what I think we should do.
Cool.
Yeah, it's like we start with ideas small and kind of build them up into their own little things, and then they eventually percolate their way up to DoneJS.
Right.
Cool. All right. Well, I'll post an issue with these things in mind, and I don't know. We can kind of start noodling on that. That's all I have. Oh, Sheriff asked observables with proxy.
So we have that can observe. Is that what it's called?
The problem is proxies aren't supported in mobile Safari yet, as far as I know. I think maybe they were just about to add them. So it's something that I think is really fun technology, but until it's like, I don't know, I just always think what we give should be supported by kind of like the majority of browsers.
Proxy was added to iOS Safari in 10.2.
Okay. So like a couple months ago or something like that. When was 10.2?
September 16th.
September? It's been around since September? Wow.
That's what Ken says.
Huh?
That's what Ken I use says.
Oh wow. Yeah, the only issue is proxy better than define?
Yes, I think so. Because I don't like
Predefining everything?
I don't like predefining anything. JavaScript's a dynamic language.
Is it? Yeah.
Have we
don't know
done
if that's
like
actually, like-
performance?
Yeah, that's definitely a major consideration is performance testing, because define map is considerably faster than can map, but I would expect without much performance testing that like proxies could be really slow in some browsers.
I think proxies are really slow, but I mean I know that's true. Well, that's what I've heard. But they don't do as much as can define does. At least our opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I see. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think can define is really. I think can define, in my opinion, has the weakness that it doesn't support properties that aren't predefined, which isn't necessarily a weakness to some people. I actually think that it's nice when like I can read a define map, and I mean, when I was upgrading can or bitballs or whatever, and I was like, oh. Look at, there's just these implicit properties that like, aren't really articulated in the view models. It's like the view is just like, especially because we have two-way bindings, it's like the view is just like, here you go, I'm setting you, and then suddenly that property exists and other properties might depend on it. Feels a little weird, right? So in some ways I like that, that our objects are sealed. But, and the other advantage that, well, before my butt, the other advantage that I think define map has is just that it's so powerful compared to proxies. Is that it's just like, oh, there's getters, setters, all of that stuff, all that computes. Like it can really, it builds you a nice type. Where proxies are more just like you have an object and it suddenly becomes observable as you mutate it. It's not like giving it anything. Now I think what I would think is that there's a way to like bring those together. I don't know. That would be my, like, can we proxify define? So it's like, just like if we're already talking about using normal class syntax, do you just wrap that with a proxy? Is there a way to do that? Is there even a way to do that? Because the problem is a proxy, like constructor functions would need
Can't extend a proxy.
Yeah. So is that even possible? to have
The proxy of the instance.
the proxy the instance. Like a normal ES function or JavaScript function, you can obviously just return in your constructor function, you can return an instance, but then just wrap it with a proxy, and then everybody would see the proxy come out and be none the wiser that they're not actually getting like an instance, which works great. But if we're trying to go ES classes, then things get weird. So I guess
you can do it too, but it is. I think
can?
there's a yeah. You can return stuff in the constructor. Yeah.
And then it gets passed out as a result of new whatever.
Yeah, but I think it's bad for some reason I can't remember exactly. There's like it's like something gets it's like you're constructing a class, but then you're not using it. Maybe.
Yeah, which happens. No, but we are in this case we are using it. We're just proxying it on the way out.
Sure, that might be.
Now,
okay.
does super could get weird. I still have never like spent the time learning like how super really works in ES classes, like what it transpiles to. I don't, I would say like we need, I think that's fine. That's great that it's feasible now. So I think then we should look into what we could do there if we think that people not defining all of their properties is that big of a weakness, or we could just make it like a plugin that it just gets added.
My opinion here is that I think for like very large components, or if you're working on a team of 5 or 6 developers and you got a component that like defining everything and like having that as documentation is very, very useful. But if you're writing like a very small component that just doesn't do very much, I think that it is fine to just do it dynamically. It's kind of it depends on which type of thing you're doing.
Yeah, I think one-person projects, because it's like, I know everything. Do I need to document it for others?
Yeah, one-person projects, or even if you are a team, if it's just a very small thing that doesn't do very much, then
can you proxy elements though?
You cannot proxy elements. No, not that I know of.
I would expect you could, but maybe for some reason, like the browser is just going to freak out at you. Like, there's no reason you shouldn't be able to, because you can make a proxy should just act entirely like the underlying object. So how would they even know that? But I feel like they do. Yeah. I just feel like they do. They like the
I'm sure they can though if they want to.
It's a special class of objects always. But then that creates a problem with that could create a problem with using it with can element, because you would need to proxy the can element if you wanted like its properties to be just observable.
Yeah, I think can element should be able to take an external view model though, because I mean some people will have existing defined maps and they don't necessarily want the element to be the view model of itself. I think there should be an option to have an external view model.
Maybe. For me, I want my can elements just to I just set properties on them.
Yeah, you can do that.
Things like that. Yeah, there's no awareness of some other kind of entity.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool. Anyways, that's all I have about this kind of stuff.
Cool. Anyone else have anything on this? Nope. We are almost at an hour, but I could give a quick demo of Search if you guys are interested in seeing it. Yeah? Okay. Let me share my screen. Cool. Okay, so this is the CanJS repo locally on my machine. You can see it's off 3.9, which we're super close to releasing. So for search, we added this little field in the black bar. You can click on it to go into the search field. Depending on your browser, it's either, let me refresh. Depending on your browser, it's either 2 or 1 tabs away. So it's really easy to get to the search field. And then we're searching not all content on the site because the search is local. The index is actually stored in local storage when you load the site. So it is super fast. So it doesn't search everything, but it searches titles, descriptions, URLs, etc. So for a really simple example, search for a cane component to get to its results. There's keyboard navigation. So if I click the down arrow, I can go to the first result and keep going through. And then if I actually want to go to the docs for anything, I can hit return and it'll load that page. So exact matches on the titles is not required. For all of the main modules like components, you can just search for that. For stash, you can just search for stash and it'll bring can stash to the front. One of the things that I like most is, let's search for bindings. So we have docs for all of the one-way, two-way bindings. If you're like me and you still don't 100% remember the bindings sometimes, it's really easy to search for one-way. You get the two-child, two-parent docs. And then if you are looking at some code and you're like, what binding syntax is that? Well, if you type in the beginning of it, you can see the docs for that binding syntax. It can find anything in the docs or on the site. So all of the guides and about pages and stuff like that are indexed too. I'm trying to think if I have missed anything. Anyone have any questions or comments?
Search is
This
awesome.
is awesome. Yeah, very awesome.
I remember when CanJS had search a long time ago. It was nice while it lasted. Glad to see it back.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. All right, I'll stop sharing this one.
So that's just gonna go out with 3.9, right?
Yeah, probably. Hopefully, we have one one blocker is an issue that Justin ran into that we're having a hard time reproducing. So hopefully he can pair with Austin on that today. And then search should be ready to go. And then whenever the 3.9 release is made, if we get search merged, and then it'll be with 3.9 or shortly thereafter. So soon. Any other questions or comments before we go? Cool. All right. Thanks, guys, for joining. Everyone who's watching on the YouTube live stream or on YouTube afterwards, thanks for watching. And see you guys next week.
Thanks, Jason.
Bye.